it's difficult to be a business owner when you don't know anybody.
So what you did, let's see, you moved across the country, you completely changed careers, and you did what is essentially built by a business that is built within a personal network without a local personal network. Could you have chosen a more difficult path?
I don't know, maybe. Yeah, seriously. So I started part-time.
Yeah.
Right. And I got a job. Right. So I had a regular job and I started part-time because, first of all, I didn't find this career. The career found me.
Hi, I'm Erin Marcus, former corporate executive turned entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business. Welcome to the Ready Yet podcast. We're excited to bring you more than 100 episodes of interviews and insights designed to help entrepreneurs get the financial and emotional freedom they need in order to build a business and a life they're proud of. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Ready Yet podcast. I'm very excited to have Jeanne Gallagher here with me today because I was introduced to Jeanne by a client, by Karen Covey, my client, who is amazing. And I actually saw her last night and we hit it off. We've probably talked for 20 minutes about what should have been on this podcast. We didn't hit record yet, but I'm really excited for people to hear more about your story, your take on things, your approach to things. But why don't you give everyone a little more formal introduction to who you are and what you do?
Will do. But first, I'll derail it already. And we just started. Let's just a shout out to Karen Covey because she's amazing. She's awesome. If anybody needs a divorce coach or help through that process, they got to hit her up because she's amazing. Yeah,
seriously. And I totally, as we're talking about it, as opposed, she's a former or
recovering attorney.
But she's so right in her messaging that the time leading up to deciding to get divorced is sometimes almost worse than once you're in it, because that unknowing is just brutal.
Yeah. So she has so many resources. I actually reached out to her for a client and she was right on it. So okay.
Yay,
so let's start
networking. Yay.
Yay. Exactly. So thank you for having me today. I'm really, really excited to be here because yes, we did talk a lot before we started. And my name is Jeanne Gallagher. I wear two hats. I am a financial advisor with GWN Securities. I live in Auburn, California. And I also have a second platform, Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better, which is a podcast platform, which is not financial. I talk with women business owners, and you and I are talking next week as well. And so understanding their journey, learning how'd you get here and how important is the outside to you and how does it make the inside better?
Well, and truthfully, because what you do in your 9 to 5 is so personal, people's money, how they choose to use it, how they choose to save it, how they choose everything they feel about it is just so personal that I imagine what you learn about people through your podcast platform just helps you connect better.
Oh, totally. And I've been talking with people my whole career of everything. So if you wind it all back to the beginning, my husband and I spent way too long in the restaurant business.
I can't even wrap my head around my experience. Wait, you'll love this. My experience in the restaurant business was a hot dog stand. And that was enough for me. Holy buckets. Is that a difficult industry?
Yeah. And it was different back then too. And we were in New England and it was very seasonal, and part of our experience was seasonal. And then part of it wasn't seasonal, but it was always in New England. And it was a very personal and very much people oriented. And as we had young children, we decided we needed to bail the industry because that's just very difficult to raise a family working, crazy hours. So we transitioned. And of course, my transitioning runs into dealing with the public again, right? And spending 12 years working for what sounds horrendous, but it was amazing. I worked for a credit card company for 12 years and people would cringe. And I'm like, oh, no, this was pivotal in what I'm doing today because the company empowered their employees. It was everything that a corporation, a company should do. You know, they empowered their employees. They expected them to learn. They expected them to move departments and bring a new look to. If you're doing a job for years, you're not going to have a fresh look. But if you go someplace else, you're going to bring the skills that you learned over there. Even if you know nothing about this department, you're bringing a fresh look in. And did we work hard? Oh, yes. You know,
but working hard is not a inherently bad thing. There's a big difference between grinding type of work and inspired hard work.
Yeah, and there was grind there too, right? There's going to be
always
anywhere,
a little
right?
bit.
There's always is, but still, you know, and well compensated for the area that we were in, but that within that organization, I learned a ton. I met people that I've been I'll be friends with forever.
And one of the things, the way I describe what you're talking about, and I was completely different industry, but I benefited from a similar experience in my corporate industry where I was encouraged to learn. I was encouraged to do new things. I was ever changing what I did. There's certain opportunities, and I do think they're limited just because of the nature of big business, but there's certain opportunities that allow you to be an entrepreneur within a corporation. And
that's
sometimes,
really good. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes what you're talking about getting to do and what you were doing is entrepreneurial in nature. Figure out the problem, find the new thing, learn the new thing, try the new thing. That's very entrepreneurial nature. And I think for those of us who were lucky enough to be entrepreneurial within a corporate environment, the skills you come away with are invaluable because you kind of get the best of both worlds.
I honestly never thought of it that way, but you're right. You're right on target, because there's that freedom, or treating people like adults and giving them the space to evolve.
Yes.
And still have the end goal in mind.
Right. But the structure and truthfully, the safety net that us entrepreneurs don't really have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, if you had asked me back then if I would have my own business, I would say,
why would I ever do that? Right.
Right. Because the culture is, you know, you go to school, get a good job. And then when you're done with this good job, find a better job.
Right.
And we're so ingrained in working for other people and not really being individuals and creatives and how do I make a difference for myself, but others as well.
And it's right. And it's one of the things that was most shocking to me, like some of the work stories, like how I thought work worked, that were very interesting for me to have my ideas just blown up, was when I left my corporate job to start my first entrepreneurial journey, which was a franchise, and I hired part-time employees. And I was thinking, where in the world am I going to find people who only want to work part-time and not set hours? Because I came out of corporate. That was the opposite of what I had. And there were all these people who were creating their own lives by mixing and matching a few different things they were interested in. So that was completely wrong of me. And then right, it's like you have this idea of how work is supposed to be. And it's not, it's just because of a lack of a frame of reference. Like that. So when I do this podcast, the other thing that I'm always intrigued by, because I always ask people, and I'm interested to hear your story as well, especially since you speak highly of your corporate experience. You know, you end up in the entrepreneurial world, which is like falling off a cliff or plummeting from a cliff, whether you jumped or whether you were pushed. But every now and then I meet somebody who grew up in an entrepreneurial family who like never had a job, and it's just intriguing.
Oh, their outlook on everything is different.
Yes. Very
different. Yeah. And, you know, I think that my time in the restaurant business helped my entrepreneurial piece because we were fortunate. We had in one of our places that we worked, my husband and I worked together in places all the time. And so we had the freedom of an entrepreneur without actually writing the checks.
Right,
that was kind of nice.
Balancing the money at the end of the month.
But still, and still in the restaurant business, there is that, you know, you have that individualism as long as you're doing the full picture. But I don't, I think that I didn't expect to be a business owner, and I came into it totally differently. And, the corporate, thank goodness I had a good corporate experience, right? And they were downsizing, and I took one of the golden parachutes, right? And my husband and I moved from Maine to Florida.
Great. That's a whole additional conversation, the culture shock on that side of
right. Yeah. So then it is, well, what do we do? And, things happen by accident for a reason.
Yeah.
Like they're supposed to. Right. And so where I am now was presented to me, and, I'm in an area, I don't know anybody. I have no warm market. And, it's difficult to be a business owner when you don't know anybody.
So what you did, let's see, you moved across the country, you completely changed careers, and you did what is essentially built by a business that is built within a personal network without a local personal network. Could you have chosen a more difficult path?
I don't know, maybe. Yeah, seriously. So I started part-time.
Yeah.
Right. And I got a job. Right. So I had a regular job, and I started part-time because, first of all, I didn't find this career. The career found me. So I didn't know if it was right for me or not. And I didn't know if I was right for it. So I was fortunate enough to be able to start part-time and kind of dip my toe in the water while I still had the comfort of a regular job, because, I could never, we talked about this before, and we'll get into this, but I could never work for somebody else again.
Right. I am now currently completely unemployable. Absolutely.
However, that brings some securities, the term benefits, it's a benefit. So it doesn't have to be there.
Excited to have it.
Yeah. But yeah. And if I go to work, if I wake up and I get to work on time and I do a fairly good job and I'm consistent, I'm probably going to get a paycheck at the end of the week.
Right.
So there's some guarantees that happen.
And I like that you're saying that from such a positive place, because I think what I see in the entrepreneurial world, because I'm surrounded by other coaches. I am a coach. I'm in coaching programs. I'm in masterminds. I'm surrounded by people in my same environment. And there is something almost like pressure for people to quit their jobs. There's almost like you're not really doing you're not committed to your entrepreneurial
unless
journey
you do it.
Unless and here's what I've seen. That's not a great idea for most people. Right? It's not a great idea for most people, because being an entrepreneur is so different from having a job. That for some people it's fine. It's the way I did it. But I also know, as a friend of mine once said, I'm okay out there on the thin branches. And I had business experience, which is different than a non-business related career. When you go into being an entrepreneur with no frame of reference for how to own a business. And
oh, totally. I did this presentation for SCORE are you ready to start your business? And this one graphic that I found that I stole and I used.
Hey, just borrowing it, credit.
I borrowed it and I used, yeah. And it was a great graphic of the day in the life of an entrepreneur. 9 o'clock. Well, technically it's never 9 o'clock.
It's 6:30.
Yeah. 9 o'clock, cup of coffee, ready to go. Excited because things go well. By 11, you're at the bottom of the emotional swing and ready to quit. And then you're working your way to lunch, get another high, get another low. And so there's this. And so if you're not ready, so I think that there's different areas of being ready to be a business owner. One is, do you have savings in place so you don't have to worry? Right? Do you have marketing in place? All these pieces, but the one that's, for me, the one that's most important, I call it my rebound rate. How quickly am I going to be down here and at least be on the way back up?
Right. There's a book, I'm blanking on the name, but it's about high performers, and they studied athletes as a way, you'll love this because it's exactly what you're talking about. They studied athletes as a way to figure out, how does somebody continue to excel and perform under massive, massive stress. And what they found is exactly what you're talking about. How fast can you rebound? And if you look at like tennis players, for example, the elite tennis player can literally rebound in the time it takes to walk back to the line. And your ability to level that out and rebound so that you can get, perform again is a huge separator of success. And I so agree with you, because when I would talk to people, and it's, I've been doing this a while now, so I don't get the question as often, but like, what are you so excited about? What do you hate? And the thing that I was not prepared for was the mood swings. I was not prepared. And it's not my favorite. It's still not my favorite thing. I was not prepared for the mood swings. Loving what you're learning here and interested in more? Check out our free Facebook group and join us at Conquer Your Business Community to find even more tips and tools designed to help you get out of reaction mode and into conquering your own business.
Yeah, and it's important to have, I'm fortunate because I have other advisors that I work with. We're all independent. It's kind of like a co-op situation. We're all independent, but we've all worked together for years. So we know each other. And so we can be real. And I can call somebody and go, can you lift me up just a moment?
Can I borrow your confidence for like an hour? Just an hour.
Okay, this isn't going well. Right. Yeah, totally. And it makes a world of difference, because you're no longer on an island. There's somebody else on the island next to you, and you can call and say, hey, throw me a pineapple.
Right. Exactly. Well, and the difference, understanding the nuanced differences between a close confidant partner like that and the water cooler woe is me, everyone's on a downward spiral problem that you'll see,
because that's contagious.
It's so contagious. And at the same time, when you own your own business and marketing's a thing and you have to show your best foot forward, otherwise why in the world would anybody hire you? Not believing the Insta reels of highlight, don't compare your reality to someone else's highlight reel, and finding the place. And what it sounds like you're talking about, you have to find the place in your entrepreneurial world where you can be vulnerable.
Yeah. And allow it to happen.
Yeah, that was the harder.
But not get dragged down by it. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
You can be, but you have to let it happen.
You can try to stifle it. It'll come out in a different way.
Yeah. And not always good.
Not always good.
Yeah. And so for me, I think, going back to what you were talking about the transition between corporate and entrepreneurial, for me, it took a really long time to be brave enough to be full-time. And I had to just, burn the boat quickly. Well, not quickly, because it took a couple of years, but finally I had to say, right. I said, either I have to do this or I'm not going to. And so I did. And that was really hard.
So looking back at that, one of the things I'm a big, big, big believer in is learning how to interpret the physical feelings in your body to provide feedback on your thoughts and ideas. And I have learned physically, when you said you got to that point, like, I know I'm taking the right step forward when I'm terrified, but I'm also excited, right? That I call it buzzy fear. When I have buzzy fear, it's time to do the next thing, as opposed to dread, which is not the time to do the thing.
Well, when I did it, my husband did not have buzzy fear.
Your husband did not have buzzy fear. Totally understand.
I think that he might have had dread.
He might have had full on dread.
And if I was being totally honest and realistic, I should have had it a little bit too.
Right. Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Right. Yeah. So the buzzy fear was louder than the dread. So here we are. Right. And so, it doesn't mean it's easy. It means that you have to be more tenacious and work through it. In somehow, even when it's not perfect, believing in yourself is hard, but you have to, and you have to work through it.
And I love that you said that, because it's an interesting, this sounds like it shouldn't be possible. Like, these are two opposing thoughts, but in my entrepreneurial journey, my lack of thinking it would work was in the day-to-day, but my belief that it would work in the long term was always there.
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. I knew it would work.
I knew it would work.
I just didn't know
why it wasn't working. Totally.
These next few hours are going to super suck, but I know that this is going to be okay.
But ultimately, it's fine. It was that me. It's fine. It's fine.
It'll be all right.
Fine. Be fine. So what if you had to share a story of something, like, one of the things I love to do is, let's lessen people's learning curves, right? Learn from don't learn from my mistakes. Like, what did you do and try that, looking back, shouldn't have done that? Learn from my mistake.
I would probably, I tell people this all the time, to make sure that if you're going to make changes, you have savings and you have a safety net, because that 6 inches between the ears, if you knew that you were going to, let me use an example. So my son-in-law, who was amazing, he was an elevator mechanic. And he wanted to do home improvements. I'm like, are you crazy? Why do you want to fix other people's problems? But he was committed because he loved to do it for himself, right? And so without my prodding, because he's very common sense about these things, he made sure that, and he's the primary breadwinner for the family. My daughter works, but he was the primary breadwinner. They have a son. And so he made sure before he pulled the plug, he had a plan. He had savings in place for a year. Wow. He started his business part-time, and he had a plan to let go of his job on a certain date. And because he had everything so lined up, it had to work, right? If he didn't have all those things in place, this is what I really should have done. I never did. So I can't answer your question. I'm going to tell you a good story.
Just use his example.
Exactly. Exactly. So, because I used his example when I was talking to the SCORE people, because it's a great example. And so what happened is he quit his job 3 months before he had planned to.
Oh, wow.
He had business lined up, and he's, it's a new business. What is this? So he's been in business for 8-9 months now, and he's doing great work. He's in Gilbert, Arizona. If anybody's listening and needs some work, I'll look you up. But one of the had everything laid out.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, and this is where you really have to know yourself, because there's a lot of people who won't do the hard thing unless they absolutely have to. So if they had so much savings, if they had the safety net, they can't get themselves to do the difficult thing. But the flip side of that is, when you don't have the plan and you don't have the savings and you don't have the safety net, your attachment to the outcome of every sales conversation you have gets so wonky that it messes everything up.
Oh yeah. If you're sitting in a presentation, no matter what your business is, and you're calculating how much this potential conversation could make you, it will never make you anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, I guess the positive part of what I learned from myself is that, what was this? So I've been an advisor for, I think, 17 years. Right. And so 6 years ago, we decided that, we had moved from Maine to Florida, and we were kind of done with Florida. Our kids ended up out West for some crazy reason. So we said, well, why don't we just move too? I'm like, okay, sure. I'm a business owner. I can do whatever I want, where I want. But there was more preparation in this transition than there was in the previous ones. And so, we relocated to California. Again, relocating to a place where I don't know anybody. There's really not much of a warm market. There's a pattern here, right?
But you figure that you think you'd learn already.
I know, right? Yeah. So we relocated. I shared an office with another advisor for a year, which was absolutely phenomenal. We were about 5 hours from our kids. Beautiful area. But we really decided, you know what, let's just move again before we get too settled into closer to the family, and then settle. And so, we did transition twice in California, but honestly, it was the best thing that I could have done. But I was ready to do it then.
Right.
There was a
And I
difference.
think, and there's also something
Even though we moved twice.
even though you had to do it twice. There's also something about that inspiring environment, whether that's your actual home, whether that's your city, whether that's where you're near, when you're where you physically feel you're supposed to be, things are just easier.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's true. It's where you feel you're supposed to be is really important. And, I'm supposed to be here now. And, it gives us, and it's amazing how when you look at things, because when you talk to people and they say, well, you've done all this moving, I'm like, yeah, that's not that big of a deal. But, and now we're in the position where, we're going to work on being able to spend, some time in the nicer weather in Maine. And that's our plan. We're still in California, but we'll be able to migrate a smidge to back home. And people are like, oh my God, that's the other side of the country. I'm like, so
that's what airplanes are for.
Yeah, well,
and cargo
that's
shipping.
Well, I would like to say that that's all that we use, but but actually there's also a 5-day car ride.
There's a 5-day car ride. There's a train ride. There's a ride. But that's just it. What you're talking about though is perception. You can decide that it's easy, or you can decide that it's hard, and either way you're right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Without a doubt. And it is, is it right? Is it where it's supposed to be? If you're doing something and it's so forced, everything you're forcing, it might not be the right time.
Right.
You might need to let it go for a little bit.
And learning to trust.
But it's hard to determine whether the force is work or the force is you're pushing against something that's not wanting to happen yet.
Well, and I go back to, again, this physical feeling, this physical response in your body. One of the things that I do a lot lately is if I'm not doing something, if something's not working, if something's not happening, if I'm not taking an action, I'm looking at why, right? I'm looking at why. And it usually falls into 3 categories. 1, it's a dumb decision and I just shouldn't do it. And the universe is trying its hardest to tell me that. Or 2, it's something that should happen, but I shouldn't be the one to do it, such as delegating it. Or then 3rd, maybe it's just fear and I need to take a look at why I'm letting fear stop me so that I can move forward.
And so how do you decide which one it is?
I can feel it. I have learned to feel it physically. I really believe you can catch a feeling faster than you can catch a thought. You can catch a physical feeling, like right away when you don't feel good, but you'll let your mind run away with you for days before you stop it. So I just observe my own behavior. I observe my own results. And then I actually spend time thinking about it instead of just reacting. Okay. That's how that feels when the thing needed to be done, but I really don't need to be the one to do it.
Yeah. There's a resistance that's there. And
but not
you have to recognize it.
But instead of going, resistance is bad, I need to push through. Instead of doing that, just being curious about the resistance so that I can interpret it better.
Yeah. Is there some reason that I was trying to do, it's kind of a silly thing, but trying to make plane reservations. And I've got a couple of different back and forths. And I got one done and I've got one far, done. And the one in the middle, I couldn't
bring
do
yourself to figure it out.
I couldn't do it. And then this morning, when I'm supposed to be waking up and where I'm supposed to be sleeping, actually, it came to me and I'm like, oh, that's why I couldn't do this. But there was some resistance. I'm like, I just can't, it didn't feel
right. Why am I not doing it? It seems so simple. And instead of making yourself wrong and bad, it's
let it go for a moment.
Awesome. Well, if people want to continue this conversation with you, learn from your podcast, because I can't wait till next week, because I love, as you know, I love the outdoors is where I rejuvenate, regenerate, everything. So I can't wait to have that conversation with you. But what is the best way to get a hold of you, find you, reach out to you?
So 2 different ways, 2 different things. So the podcast platform, Discover Rising Tides, discoverrisingtides.com. And there's a YouTube channel for Discover Rising Tides as well. So you can find the previous shows. And there, contact information is on there. Email address is at hello@discoverrisingtides.com. My business address is seasidesolutions.net. And all of my contact information is listed there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story with me. I love this conversation. I'm always intrigued by how other people decide to do what they do and how they interpret what's going on and how that actually just helps everyone else. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a blast.
Spending some time. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.